Hey guys, welcome to the Dad Mode Activated podcast. This is my first episode, and the reason why I'm doing this now is, I have some shorter length videos, and I start my new live streams weekly. But I really wanted to just kind of have a way to be able to kind of speak my mind and have a longer, kind of drawn out conversation. As sometimes filming the videos, you try to fill out everything into a small time frame, and you're focused on more of just like getting the information in a short period of time. And this allows for more conversational. So I guess with the first episode of the podcast starting, I guess I'll kind of just go into why I created Dad Mode Activated. So I think Dad Mode Activated is a mindset that we have. It's not just a lifestyle, or it is a lifestyle. It's not just one thing that we do. It's a part of who we are. When we encompass all the things that make us who we are, and we put that into our dad energy. So I've prioritized making sure that I've been a consistent force in my son's life, and making sure that in all aspects that I'm making sure that I'm being a good motivator and a good father to him. So really what I want to talk about today is when I started this channel, the main reason why I started was because I didn't really find the type of resources out there that I was hoping to find. Being a single dad, some of the things I would see out there were mainly about, owning your partner in family court. And like, I understand that is important, and I think a lot of that has to do is you see like the attorneys out there, and they're doing their videos, and you kind of fall in this trap. And then once you start watching those videos, kind of like those are all that come up in the algorithm, and there is an importance for that, but mainly the reason why I made this channel is, I was hoping for more resources out there to kind of like teach me how to be the best single dad I could be. And I just wasn't getting the information out there that I wanted. I started my single dad journey when my son was 4. Up until that point, me and his mother were together, and she would do I guess the heavy lifting when it came to like doing making sure he's eating everything and making sure he's going to bed at a certain time. And I wasn't around for a lot of that because I was at work. They would go to bed pretty early, so I wasn't really around for that. And honestly, when I knew I was gonna be a single dad and I had to get my own place, getting an apartment and setting it up to be like kid friendly, which was honestly pretty easy because I didn't have anything. So when you're starting from scratch, it's really easy to make sure that your place is kid proof. But it was terrifying that first night, not knowing like routines, and like making sure he gets fed and making sure he's happy, because when he was a baby there was a lot of colicking. So that's why I made this channel. Was once I started doing the single dad thing, like it became very easy for me. It almost became like the most natural thing I've ever done. Once, I think the scariest thing was going to bed, and once we woke up, it was like, wow, I really can do this. And since then, I just haven't looked back. I went through a custody battle for a hot minute there, and that lasted about 2 years. And for the last 2 years, I've been out of it. But I dealt with a lot of challenges throughout that time. Fighting for custody is not easy. Unfortunately, there's a lot of factors that you don't control in the process. And basically, I wanted to make this channel because I think I did a pretty good job navigating. Obviously there was mistakes that I made along the way, and I want to be able to educate guys about that process, and ways of combating those negative behaviors. Number one thing I tell dads is like, there isn't really anything you can do to positively change the family court situation. Like, you're not gonna you're not going to positively change things in one day, but you can destroy your case in a moment, in an instant. The margin of error for dads is so incredibly small that like you kind of have to be on your best behavior all the time because the court's not going to give you any leniency. At no point when I was in family court did they ever ask, "Hey, what kind of parent are you? What kind of things do you like to do with your son? What are you feeding him? What kind of toys are you playing with? What kind of activities are you guys doing?" Like none of that was ever asked. Like it's always like, what's in the best interest of the child. But there's no really any there's no ask from the court of like who you are and what you do as a parent, and I think that's the most frustrating part. So like the number one thing I try to emphasize to people is just control what you can control. And a lot of my videos have to do with that is prioritizing your relationship with your child first. When you're with your kid, that's all you need to be focused on is the consistency you have with your child. And when you're not with your child, that's when it's time for your personal growth and kind of getting through the troubled parts of your life. And that's the appropriate time to do that stuff. And obviously, like the stress of family court is immense, and it's hard to really describe that in just a couple few words. But it was a hard experience. Fortunately, my faith kind of got me through that troubling time in my life, and I came out the other side. And about 2 years ago, I wanted to start making videos because my journey is very interesting. And the parenting journey is the most recent part of it. I've been through a lot of different things in my life, and I've overcome a lot of tragedies. I've overcome a lot of adversity, and I think I'm a greater person because of it. And I really just want to be able to share those experiences. 2 years ago, I made my first video was about losing my twin brother. And then I made some military content, and then I took about a year off, and I really wanted to do the YouTube thing again, and I tried, and I thought maybe this time I'll film better content. I'll film a better angle. I'll be prepared. I'll have a script. I'll use my phone instead of the camera on my laptop. And I realized that I pretty much had the same realization that both work kind of the same way. Starting a YouTube is very challenging. I think in the beginning when you first start doing it, there's a lot of pressure on yourself because you think that like the moment that you film that first video, you put it on YouTube, and then people are just instantly going to start watching, and that's not really the case. You put time and effort into a product, and when you don't see an immediate response from it, it's very demoralizing. And like, I'll be honest, I quit, and I kept thinking about it, and I came back and I did that video, and then I nearly quit again because I was checking the analytics, and just there wasn't any views coming. The only views that were on there were the ones when I clicked on the video and I watched it. So the funny thing I tell people is like when you start the YouTube, it says like you need 4,000 watch hours to get monetized, and I thought that meant like that I watched for 4,000 hours, and when you do the math on it, that's like 197 days. So it's kind of crazy when you think about it. But I did that, didn't feel like it was gonna work, and I looked up like stuff on YouTube, and like shorts was like a thing. And I filmed my first short, and it was something, it was about Oreo cookies, but I wanted to make it more dad related, so I was like thinking of concepts I wanted to do, and that's when the dad joke of the day started. I started doing those, and I'll be honest, I didn't really know how to film shorts. I just kind of put myself in front of the camera. I didn't really know how to do the captioning or anything like that. So if you look back and you watch my first couple of episodes, or probably I think that first like 25 was really where I kind of like, I started to slowly figure things out, and now like it's part of my everyday. And I've been doing that now since late August of last year, and it's going pretty well. It's probably my biggest builder on YouTube. But the core of why I started it was I wanted to be able to help other dads, and I wanted to help other men, and basically it's not just those categories, because I care about just helping anybody that's going through a challenging time, regardless. When I started my channel, like, a lot of channels just do one thing and that's all they do, and I fought with that. I'm like, I don't know if I can just hone into one specific thing. Like, I wanted to be able to help all people, and I think all the different parts of me make me who I am as a person. They make me who I am as a father. So regardless if you're not coming to my page for some of the videos, like, there is something that has to do with everybody, and I'm hoping that, like, those people find me, because I feel like I have a lot of good information to put out there. And I guess this kind of goes into my next venture, and it's been a long time coming, and I thought about doing this for a long time, but I finally decided to write my book. I've always wanted to talk about my life, because there's a lot of different things that I've done in my life and that I've had gone wrong in my life, and I've learned so many different things from all those adversities, and I want to be able to share my journey with people, because I really feel like it can almost resonate anybody that's gone through any kind of hardship in their life. Early on in my life, I was the child of two parents that had mental illness. I spent some time in the foster care system. I lost my twin brother. I lived with a parent that was kind of emotionally unavailable. And that was a hard time in my childhood, and because of that and the lack of direction and guidance from my father, I struggled early on in life. I didn't learn the basic fundamentals of hygiene, of being well kept, and it opened me up a lot to ridicule and to bullying. Losing my brother kind of made me lose my sense of who I was, and there was a lot of loneliness early on in life. And then there was abuse, and I talk about that, and basically, those childhood years were the hardest of my life, and school was hard, high school was hard, and I was kind of lost for a while, and my mom passed away, and I went to college. I got my associate's degree, then I went to a 4-year college, and I got my bachelor's degree. I've navigated through 2 stints in the military, and I've navigated through parenthood. So, like, there's a lot of things in my life that I want to talk about, and I think, like, starting a YouTube was kind of like my venture into actually going out there, and starting to make videos and putting information out there and starting to have those conversations with people. It's been incredibly motivating and inspiring. Um, you know, my channel is really community based, and really the best way I get the most out of it is by interaction with the people I talk to. And recently I started doing live streams because it gave me an opportunity to have real conversations with people. And when you're in this space, it can be difficult because, like, there's a lot of videos that I make that I think would be really helpful to people, but for some reason the algorithm doesn't push them out, or there's something I do that doesn't resonate, like whether it's a thumbnail or a title or a description of the video that's not properly pushing it out there. But like, I think there's a lot of information I want, and I think that doing the YouTube videos is very helpful, and there's a lot that I can put out there. But all those things take a lot of, like, thought process and writing scripts. And I think pretty early on in my YouTube journey is, I tried doing a lot of scripting, and I feel like one of the coping mechanisms I've had throughout my life has been my sense of humor. And it was really hard to convey my sense of humor in those early videos because, I was reading off a script, and, like, how much of your personality can you really interject into a script? Obviously people read scripts and they memorize them, and then they kind of give their own portrayal of that, and that's kind of what I led into. So, those first videos, they might have had good substance to them, but because they were so dry in the way I delivered them, it probably didn't lead to people wanting to stick around. Nobody wants to sit around and listen to a robot speak. So, I started doing the off script stuff and kind of just having conversations like I'm having right now. The only problem with that is that, like, I say the word a lot. Like, if I just made like a compilation of all the times I said I'd probably have like a 9-hour video. So, and I started doing the live streams. I really enjoyed that. And basically, I found that to be a good way to connect with the people that are in my community, whether it's dads looking for advice, whether it's older people that are joining the military that need questions, or they're looking at what the experience is like being an older soldier. I thought it very beneficial to be able to have those live feeds and be able to have like real conversations. Like, somebody could put it in the chat and I can answer in real time. I think that's something you can't really get out of doing a scripted video. Like, I can have a topic and I can start talking about it, but it's not necessarily that I can answer a specific question that somebody has. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So if somebody had a question and I wouldn't even know to even have that as a topic. So it's been an ongoing journey. I would say being a small creator, it's been pretty cool, because I feel like when you're a small channel, you don't really have to like settle into one specific thing that you do. And you kind of get to play around and kind of test things and see what works for you. So from that standpoint, it's been pretty interesting journey so far. And I think I just had a epiphany last week, and in my fatherhood journey, things, as my son turns certain ages, like certain moments become like full circle moments, and they come back to like my childhood. And I go to I remember being in school when I was younger, and I remember, like, in general, just like certain timelines, certain time frames, they start evoking certain emotions. So my brother died when he was 4 years old, not when we were 4 years old. So for me, like, that first 4 years was incredibly stressful because I had PTSD from my brother dying. And I think when he turned 5, that hit a milestone that was able to lift like a weight off my shoulder, and it kind of opened me up to stop being so stressed all the time, because I used to think about like the worst case scenario all the time, and something was to happen to my son, and sometimes it was paralyzing. And then, like, there's certain points, come here. Come here. Sorry, guys. My dog is chewing on something. So, once I hit certain milestones, there was those full circle moments where I think about, like, being that age. It's like starting kindergarten, like having the challenges that I had educational wise, not having a present father emotionally made it hard, because, in those first couple of years I was alone. I mean, that was like maybe like a year and a half after my brother died. So, like, I was still getting used to being alone all the time, when before that I was with my brother all the time. And then, like, having the milestones of, like, I think this year, he had trouble at his previous school when we moved him. And things were considerably better. His teacher was awesome. Like, navigating, like, attention stuff and dealing with that. And, I tried to volunteer on every field trip that I can, because I think there's a lot of quality and value in being able to spend time with your kids. I mean, at that age, your kids are... Sorry, I had to go away for a second. My dog was chewing on stuff. But the beauty of doing a podcast. So, I got to a moment where my son was doing well, and I mean, from like a social standpoint, like obviously, like the education part of it is a constant, like constantly needs attention because at that age, kids think school is boring. So that's been a constant like thing we've been working on. His teachers are awesome. I'm very grateful and thankful for his teachers. But from like a social standpoint, being bullied pretty early in my life, those were some of the things that I stressed about and I didn't want for my son. And, being going to the field trips and seeing my son thrive in social environments, it as a dad, like it made me so incredibly happy. And like I think when you can cross something off a list that gave you immense stress as a kid, um, getting to a point where you're seeing your kids thrive and they don't have to deal with that emotional hurdle that you did. uh, it's little moments like that like it gives you a sense of relief, and that's what I felt. And every step of the journey, my goal is to, once I started filming these videos, is just giving guys like encouragement that sometimes these moments are hard, especially if you start going to like family court and you have custody battles. And like really the main thing to focus on is just staying consistent with the way you treat things. My motto is, if you don't do the right stuff now, you don't deserve the stuff that's later on down the road. And the perfect example of that is like my dad's journey. So I'm at the age now where I don't really have a relationship with him anymore because I don't feel like he adds value to my life. I think in your early years, when you get to be like up to 18 years old, like you think of your parents in a certain light and like you don't know any better than that. Like obviously things slowly start to boil over and like you start seeing things as they are. But like when you're a kid, you put your parents on a pedestal no matter how bad they are. And the worst part is that it takes so many years to be able to finally see the truth and the reality of what things are. And like I want to protect kids from having to feel that. And if I can connect with fathers and I can talk them through it and kind of tell you how this situation is, and like being somebody that didn't have the father I needed, I can tell you like fully the damage that it can have not having an emotionally present father. I've navigated from being a stepfather figure and kind of trying to be a positive male role model in my former stepson's life, and trying to be just an additional resource for him. I think as a stepfather, your goal is not to ever replace the father. It's to hopefully nurture that relationship with the father, but also be an additional resource. Like your job isn't to replace. Your job is to be there for the kid and guide and teach them as you can, without stepping on toes. And that's a hard thing to learn for a lot of people. But I think that with the way marriages fail all the time, it's very likely that at some point, a lot of the men that watch my channel will probably be stepfathers at some point. So I think it's important to be able to talk about those things. And obviously just the steps in the journey and certain milestones and certain like ways I parent, I think are important to like tell parents. Like I see so many videos online of like harsh parenting or extreme parenting. It's like either one way or the other. Like you're just overly disciplinary, which I don't think is good for kids, because I think kids need to learn how to process their emotions and be able to kind of have a parent that guides them through those emotions so they can learn how to be mentally strong people. And I also don't think that I think the comforting parenting, I don't think extreme of anything is good. So if you're doing too much, if you're giving too much power to the kid, you're not doing your kid a favor by doing that. The gentle parenting, that's what it's called. The beauty of the podcast is that like I'm in real thought right now, so I try to make this as conversational as possible. Like if I was in a video, I would have edited that out. But yeah, I don't think there should be extreme one way or the other. Like my parenting style is, my goal is to teach my son. My goal isn't to have him be fearful. And I remember like kids when we were younger, they would not do stuff because they didn't want to get punished. But instead of not doing the thing that got them punished, they just tried to hide it. And that usually made things twice as hard on them once their parents did find out. So I don't want to be in a situation where my son felt like he had to hide things from me. So basically, the way I discipline him is basically whatever he does wrong, I usually give him an opportunity to make mistakes first, because I think we learn the most from the mistakes that we made. Like, I'm 40 years old now, and I think the greatest lessons I've learned have come from my failures. I think you learn more from your failures than your successes. So I think that every failure is an opportunity to educate yourself and to learn something new that you didn't know. So when he does something wrong, we mark it, we identify it, we talk about it. Like, there's never like lip service. It's never like, say sorry. Like, I want to know why you're sorry, and I want you to know why what you did was wrong, why it's not acceptable, why it's not okay. And I think being able to have that communication, I think it shows a level of respect. Like, it shows that, like, I'm not perfect, like, or this is what your kid would say, is like, I'm not perfect, but I'm able to learn. I'm able to diagnose things. And this is just from my example, when you do those things, you get to see the gears work, and you see the wheels in motion when they're going through things. There's been so many times, like, I'll teach my son something and he'll see it in real world, like a real world setting, like on a playground or something, and I'll hear him tell the kids he just met, like, these things that he's learned. And it's hilarious, it's funny. And like, it really resonates, because like, when they feel like that, they can actually listen to the message, and they actually know what's right and what's wrong. And I feel like most kids just try to avoid the reaction that you might get, like screaming. It's like, one of the things I do is, unfortunately, when my son was younger, when my son's mother and I were breaking up, I had a moment where we got in a fight, and I yelled at her. And I never did this before, but like, I was audibly pretty loud, and I saw my son scared, and that was like an eye-opening moment for me. I think seeing your child scared is the worst feeling in the world. Like, because as fathers, our goal is to protect our kids and keep them safe, and keep them from the bad things in the world. And when your kid's scared of you, you can't really do that, because then you're just adding to the things that they're scared of in the world. Our goal is to be guides to them, and put them in the best position, so when they're independent, they're able to navigate life because of the lessons that you taught them. So that's kind of covers who I am. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I mean, I have the dad jokes every single day, so there is daily humor. Humor has been a big part of my life, and being able to use humor has got me through some of the worst situations I've encountered. But really, like, last Saturday was a turning point in my life. My son just turned 8 years old on Friday, and I brought him to the lake, and we rented a kayak, and it just started out as a normal day, and a normal, like, outdoor adventure of stuff that we do. And I don't know, like, I saw, like, looking into my son's eyes, I saw how happy he was. I saw joy in his heart. I saw that he still had this sense of innocence to him, which at his age, my innocence had been gone since I was 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. Like, some of the things that I went through, the abuse and the bullying and the tragedy and the losses, that stuff added up. And I was a little kid on the outside, but on the inside, I was tormented, and I was thinking about thoughts that no kid should have to think about. And to look at my son and see him thriving and happy and joyful, it really it really struck something with me. And then like being on the kayak, like being poor when I was a kid, like doing something like that wasn't something that happened. Like, and if it did happen, it was because of charity. It was never like something that my dad did. Like, first of all, he never really worked. Uh, it was so few and often between that we actually had a working vehicle. Um, so going out wasn't really a thing. You know, I spent a lot of time on my own out in the world where bad things were able to happen to me. And like to look at my son and have him be happy, it really struck a chord. Like to feel like I've been doing a good job as a dad, and that halfway through his childhood, he still has a lot more to go, but like to have him be happy, it really opened my eyes because I realized that like that was never even a possibility for me. And that opened up a whole new, I guess it opened up an insight where I guess I want to be able to share my story with my son one day, and like I want to leave behind a legacy when I leave. Um, and I decided that I finally needed to write my memoir and write the history of my life, who I am, how I got here, the challenges I went through. So basically, last week I decided that I was gonna write my life story and write my memoir. Uh, I started on Monday, and I started writing, and I started doing dictation for the story I wanted to tell. And today I finished that memoir in 1 week. I finished my whole life story. Obviously, it's the skeleton version of it, and there's things I need to add and things I want to expand on. Um, but as of right now, I put together 39 chapters, a dedication, and an introduction to myself. Um, I broke it up into two chains, or two sections for the book. Um, and that kind of part came to me as I was progressing through it. So when I think of the grand scheme of my life, like I'm 40 years old. I graduated college when I was 29, and I started having my first full-time job when I was 30. So basically 75% of my life was experiencing life, going through tragedies, finding ways of coping through those tragedies, and working my way through college and kind of getting to myself to the point where I could graduate college and start applying those things. I started my first job when I was 30. That was like the first part of my career, like my first real taste of adulthood post college. And I worked in restaurants for a little while, and I had a little short stint in the military, in the Army back when I was 18 years old. Didn't work out. And this next step is like the second part. Basically, my book is about breaking generational chains, and this book focuses on me being the last chain of basically the old family. I guess the curses of those things, and the mental health and the poverty and all that stuff. My goal is that I'm the last person in that chain. Having a mother that's deceased and a dad's not around, my son doesn't really know about or see any of the stuff that I had to go through and endure. And obviously now I'm at a good spot in my life where I found success in my career. So I think from that arc, it made sense to start doing it now because, when I first started, everything seemed bleak, and it seemed like getting out of that was impossible. When you go through hardship and you see stuff around you, it's really easy to fall into that trap and kind of just continue down the path that you already know. And, I struggled a lot in my early years. I struggled a lot in high school, and even a couple of years after high school, after failing in the military and, starting a new career. I kind of went the easy path in my career, and, after I graduated college, I went through a lot of life-changing things, and I went through things that they just changed my perception on things. And going to college, like I originally went to college because I wanted to be a dentist. Um, and then I wanted to be a football coach, and I did some cool things with that. Didn't get the job as a coach. I waited tables for a long period of time, and I fell into the comfort zone of being offered a position as a manager. And I did that, and that's where I met my son's mother. So like my story is basically every step of my life is a learning. There's a learning component to it. So my book, each chapter goes into that period of my life. Like I said, it's 39 chapters, so it goes significantly into each time of my life, and it goes through the early years. It goes through like elementary school, the things I went through and experienced there, middle school, high school, sports, love, like all these. I kind of have the mindset of a person that is seeing their life from above and kind of pointing out what I learned from that phase, how that changed me as a father, how that changed me to become like motivated and successful in my life. Uh, each chapter goes into that story and kind of expands on how I became who I am today. And by all accounts, I shouldn't be where I am today based on where I came from. And that's really what I really want to talk about in the book, which is, I think what I have right now, the rough draft, is pretty great. I think it has a lot of emotional moments, and it has like a lot of funny moments. Like I said, I've always been a person that's found humor in pretty much everything, and that's kind of the person I want to portray. There's a lot of pop culture references in there. I find it easy to be able to compare stuff and kind of give you visual cues of what these moments felt like, what this experience did for me, how it pushed me forward. And I think some of the references will give you opportunities to see what these moments were like in actuality. So that's kind of where it begins. And then each of the milestones, what I learned from them. It's honestly like when I look at it, like there's so many different things that I went through in life that were so tragic that like it's almost like you couldn't even make it up if you tried. My arc is definitely different than a lot of people's, and I want to be an inspiration to people that are going through periods of time in their life where they think that they're a prisoner of their situations or the things that they went through. And like I want this book to be a testament that like you can achieve anything you want in your life. And obviously, like, I'm not the pro athlete, I'm not a CEO of a company. I just worked myself into a career that I can take care of my family and give my son a decent life and kind of give him the things that I never had. And that's what it's really about, is like I want to empower people to take their own lives back. Like I don't want people to think that the things that they go through or the circumstances they're in, I don't want them to think that writes their story. Obviously it's where you came from and those are experiences you went through, but those don't necessarily define who you are as a person. And that's really what I talk about in my memoir. I have an interesting pacing to it. I think it'll resonate with a lot of readers. I think that there's parallels that you guys might be able to find in certain situations that I went through, and I think you'll be able to use those scenarios and kind of overcome any adversities that you have. I'm a big proponent of my faith, and I think when I look back, and sometimes there was moments that didn't make sense to me, and there was moments I was angry, and when I look back, like I think what really writing this book has done is it gave me a new perspective on how I viewed the things that happened in my life, because at certain points I had so much anger and I didn't really understand why the things happened. But then when I look back and I go through chronologically and I realize the lessons that I had or the opportunities that were presented to me or like decisions that I made in split seconds. And when I look back on it, like I can see where the pin was dropped, and I can see the connecting points and see how those decisions inspired what happened today. So, it's really easy to be complacent, and it's really easy to blame things. And I'm at a point where I've gotten to where I'm happy in life, and I realize that everything that's happened to me prior to now has led me exactly to where I want. So I'm grateful for the struggle because it gave me a whole different perspective on life. It that it wouldn't if I hadn't gone through those things. Um, so it's definitely a story of overcoming adversity, of overcoming tragedies and traumas, and perseverance, and just working hard in that never give up attitude. I think it'll resonate with a lot of people. I've seen some of the stories I've told kind of show up in my stories and my videos, and I think that's really what gave me the confidence to do it, because I've talked about years saying like, hey, I think my story would be really interesting. I think it'd be cool to get out on paper and maybe publish it. And I think for a long time I thought that you had to have like some kind of remarkable ending for your story to resonate. But honestly, like being in a position I am, like I shouldn't be here. Like I'm only here because of the tenacity that I showed. And like I really want this book to tie my life together. Like I want somebody to know that like they could have grown up in the foster care system. They can still find happiness and joy. You can deal with the loss of a parent, the loss of a sibling. You can still find ways of persevering and finding motivation in your life from that. Like I want you to know that the bad things that happen to you, when they're really hard to make sense of it in the present, when you get to the point in your life where you're like me, when you're starting to tie things together and you look back and you see how those changed you in those moments and they got you to where you are now, like it'll make sense. Um, I think that could be incredibly powerful and helpful to those who are going through tough times right now, because I think having a real world example of these things and seeing somebody that's overcome it, I think that can give tremendous power to somebody who might not feel like that they have an opportunity to make it better. Now, at no point do I think that any of this stuff is easy, and none of it is given to you. But if you have the desire in your heart to be something better, and you truly work hard, I think that there's nothing that you can't accomplish. Um, there were certain limitations I had along the way, and I talk about those in my book, and I talk about the opportunities I had and the mindset that I had to get through those things. And the reason why I wanted to share them is because I did get through those things. Uh, and now I'm at a place where I'm happy. It takes a lot of courage to sit down and start writing. I think the one thing I found through the process is it was way it was way more emotional than I could have imagined. I think when you go through life, you start fragmenting parts of your life, and you put things away, and you put them deep down, and you might have had bad times before, and when you start going through them chronologically, and you start like going through and discussing the stories, and by talking about those stories, you start thinking about things that were adjacent to that at the time, and you just forgot about them. uh, you know, Reading back the edited versions of my stories after like I was blurred them all out, and I tied together, like literally, it's like going back in time. And like the best analogy and reference I can make to how it felt was I was like basically like Ebenezer Scrooge, and the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of what's yet to come. Like I felt like I was with the ghost of Christmas past, but I was also with the ghost of Christmas present because I was in those moments, and I can connect the dots to the person I am today to those moments back then. And I think that's extremely powerful. You know, Journaling and writing I've always found is a very therapeutic way to get through some of the hardest times of life. And the reason why I've always done that is I think to have a written record of the things that you're going through, when things get tough or when things get better, and you go and you read the things that you were talking about, um, even just sometimes a few weeks ago, you can see the growth that you have, and it kind of pushes you and motivates you. I compare it to losing weight. There was a time where I thought I was fat, and then I gained 30 pounds, and then I'm like, well, man, if I just went back to where I thought I was fat, I'd feel good again. So your perspectives change on where you are currently. And I think that's important to understand. I think when you can understand that and you can see things like that, I think it moves you in a direction that's positive. So I'm gonna start doing these updates. I'm gonna start doing these podcasts. It's kind of an unscripted way for me just to have a conversation with you guys, and obviously I'll put the timestamps down. So if there's certain parts that you want to hear or listen to, feel free to do that. But today I finished my manuscript. It's 39 chapters. It's 71,000 words, which is honestly pretty crazy to me when I think about like that my life story is that. So the next steps right now is going through it with a fine-tooth comb. I have a certain goal and accomplishment I want for each chapter. Like, I don't want any chapter just to exist. Like, I want it to be something meaningful, something that has a life lesson, something that somebody can take away. A lot of the chapters are very serious in nature, but there's that little bit of levity where I'm showing my humor and my personality, and the book sounds like me talking, just a little more organized. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you guys watching. If you're interested about hearing about more about the book, please feel free to comment below. I want to kind of go more deeper into the process of writing as I progress in these podcasts. Like I said, this is a way for me to kind of just be long-winded in what I'm talking about and discussing, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of just go back and watch certain parts that help you. I think tonight's episode, the very first one, is a good introduction to who I am as a dad. I've been doing this now for about a year. I got the shorts every day. I got the videos, the long form videos about certain topics. I started doing the lives recently, and now I'm gonna do the podcast because I think this is the best way to be able to really tell stories and kind of let you guys know where I stand with the book. And yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. If you want to watch, if you like this kind of stuff, if you like these kind of storytelling and you're interested in more, and you want to hear things I have to talk about, please subscribe, please like, please share. I appreciate all that you guys do. I appreciate you guys watching, and may God bless you in your journeys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night or day.